Good afternoon. I'm glad to be joined today by my friend, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida. We're here to champion some of our shared priorities for holding the federal government accountable, ensuring fiscal responsibility, and urging the adoption of a balanced budget amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Reckless spending in Washington, particularly in the last 4 years under Joe Biden, has left us more than $36 trillion in debt. While increasing the size of government, piling debt onto the backs of future generations, in Washington they've been spending like drunken sailors. And that's not what our founding fathers envisioned. We need a change, and fast, to prevent our children and grandchildren from inheriting this mess that they've created. As you know, there is no constitutional limit on congressional borrowing. It's up to Congress to police itself. Unfortunately, no two-year Congress can bind a succeeding two-year Congress by simple statute. And talking about balancing the federal budget in Washington, it's not a popular message. I know firsthand. When I was first sworn in as a member of Congress, I chose this very topic for my first speech. I proposed legislation on my first day in Congress to prohibit lawmakers in Washington from being paid unless they passed a balanced budget. Shockingly, I was booed by both Democrats and Republicans. So in an interesting way, I actually brought everybody together. It's clear Washington needs some encouragement to get its fiscal house in order. We can't expect Washington to impose permanent fiscal restraints on itself. That's why we need a balanced budget amendment to the U.S. Constitution. While every business, school district, city, or family must balance their budgets, sadly, the U.S. government doesn't have to do the same. Meanwhile, at the state level, every state but one has a balanced budget requirement in its constitution. In Montana, we've been hyper-focused on delivering not only a balanced budget, but also cutting income taxes for Montanans at every income level, holding the line on new spending, and keeping spending growth well under inflation, and even paying off the state debt. Our efforts have resulted in Montana now being completely debt-free. And while we've been fiscally responsible, the reality is the nationwide affordability crisis has harmed hardworking Montanans. Because of our conservative and balanced budgets over the last 4 years, Montana has a surplus again to deliver historic tax relief. In fact, thanks to our strong fiscal management, we were able to propose the largest income tax cut in state history, so more Montanans can keep more of their hard-earned money. That's what's possible with strong fiscal discipline. Thankfully, with President Trump in the White House and with strong leadership of Republican governors across the nation, we're restoring common sense and putting the American people first. Again, I'm glad to have my friend Governor Ron DeSantis here. He knows a thing or two about balancing budgets and cutting taxes. He spent a little time in Idaho this morning and then came here to Montana to meet with legislators, which we just concluded. With that, I'll turn it over to Governor DeSantis.
Okay. Well, thank you, Governor. It's great to be back in Montana. If you know anything about Florida, you know, particularly come summertime, we got quite a number of our residents that make their way up to various parts of Montana, and I've had the fortune of being able to be up here over the summer in the past, and you can see why. It's a beautiful country, a lot less humid than the state of Florida, and you see why people want to come and enjoy it here. And I also feel at home, not just because there's a lot of Floridians that are amongst us in the summers, but I also know I'm in a state that sees things similar the way the state of Florida does. And they've done a lot of great work in here, both under the governor's leadership as well as the Montana legislature. I know they got more that's in the hopper for this legislative session. I know the governor's pushing tax relief and some really good stuff, and hopefully we see all that get to a landing. But you guys have done a great job, and the proof's in the pudding. People have gravitated to Montana. They have fled states that have performed poorly as a matter of policy, and they've gravitated to states like Florida and Montana, and I expect that to continue into the future. But no matter how well we can do in Florida. And I can sit here and tell you, we're ranked number one in economy 2 years in a row, number one in education, 50-year low in the crime rate. We got the lowest of any state that has debt, the lowest per capita debt in the country. We're spending less money this year than last year, cutting taxes. I can go through all that, and it's great, and it's important to show leadership. But ultimately, the states are not going to be successful if federal spending and the Congress does not get under control. When the turn of the 21st century happened, we were about $5.6 trillion in debt as a country. So that's from the time George Washington put his hand on the Bible as the first president, 1789, all the way until the turn of the 21st century, it was $5.6 trillion. Today, 25 years later, we're at over $36 trillion in debt. Just the interest that we pay to service our existing debt is over $1 trillion annually. That's more than what we spend on the core function of the federal government, our national defense. And in the budget that the Republicans in the House passed, they project that the total national debt by the year 2034 will be almost $56 trillion. That is not sustainable. The one thing I've learned, having been in the Congress for a few terms, and I have recovered from that experience, but I was there, is Congress is just not going to start behaving differently. That is not going to happen. And even if for somehow they had an epiphany and they governed a little bit differently, the next Congress would come in and undo it, and none of this stuff would ever have staying power. So the Founding Fathers understood this could happen. They understood that the federal officials, particularly in Congress, could be the problem, and they provided with the states with the ability to propose amendments to the Constitution to fix things. And so a balanced budget amendment to the U.S. Constitution is basically limiting the ability of politicians in Washington to bankrupt the country. It's saying that you can't just keep putting things on a credit card and passing the buck to future generations. Just think, go back to the late 1990s. We actually had a balanced budget in this country. And while that was being done, you had Republicans in Congress, which you had a Democrat president, and they were fighting over it, but the momentum was to balance the budget. You also had a debate in the Congress about a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. Congress came one vote short of certifying a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution for ratification by the states. Just imagine if they had actually enacted that back 25 years ago, how much different would things look fiscally for this country? We would be in great shape had they done that. They came one vote short. So now we're in a situation where this is reaching levels that are going to plunge us into a crisis at some point. And full disclosure, I can't tell you it's going to be when we hit 37 trillion, 38 trillion. I don't know when that point's going to be, but I think we all know there will become a point where just servicing the debt is going to be cost prohibitive for us. So we have an opportunity to do something about it. I know 27 states, including Florida, have certified this proposal for a balanced budget amendment. Voting for it doesn't mean that you are voting to amend the Constitution yet. That's on the back end when you have a chance to vote to ratify, and you would need 38 states to do that. But I think it would be great if Montana, I was also in Idaho, and we have some other states in the hopper that are considering that, if they do this. That's going to put a lot of pressure on Congress. I guarantee you if this gets to 32, 33 states, you're going to see Congress scurrying to be able to write and pass a balanced budget amendment and send to the states for ratification. So I thank the governor for his support on this. I thank all the great folks I've met here in Montana and the legislature who are supportive. I know there were some folks that had some good faith concerns about what direction this would go, and hopefully we were able to answer enough questions that you guys can get this on the docket and get it out the door, and then we'll go to South Carolina and Kentucky and a lot of these other states to get the job done. So I appreciate it, and we're happy to take some questions.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Ron. And I would just say we have something in common. Because of your fiscally conservative policies and pro-business policies, Montana and Florida are the only two states in the country where wage growth exceeded inflation over the last 4 years. So congratulations on that.
You too.
Questions? Have time for a couple? Yes. Just if you could share your.
Zeke Lloyd, Montana Free Press. I'm curious, we're in the middle of a legislative session right now. Why are we talking about this at this moment?
Well, I think it's because this is something during the session that the legislature can certify. And I think if they certify, they'd be the 28th state. Idaho could be the 29th state. We feel really good about South Carolina being the 30th state. And then you have Kentucky and a handful of others that you would want to go to. What'll happen is, if we're right, so 34 states would trigger to where the states would write the amendment and then vote on it and then send it to the states for full ratification. But we think 33 votes, 33 states would cause Congress to rush in. They would want to draft an amendment. Obviously, people of our ilk would work with them to get something that would be good. And then the Congress potentially could pass something. Then it would go right to the states for ratification. And you'd have a great debate across this country about how do we think Congress should manage our finances? Do we want to continue going with the failed model of the last 25 years? Or do we want to pose some constraints? So now's the perfect time to do it. The founding fathers understood that the change needed to be driven in some instances by the states. And it's not enough for Montana and Florida and Idaho to say, hey, look, we're governing well. Look at all the great things we've done. We also are key players in the constitutional system. And the founding fathers envisioned us having a role in these national affairs. And so we're taking that role seriously.
Yes.
Blair Miller with Lee Newspapers. We've had a couple bills come through and already be tabled or die on the floor so far this session. Sort of the same fate as last session with most of these bills. Are you going to try to urge another bill to come forward or something to come off the table to sort of facilitate this session?
Well, it's not over till it's over. As you know, there's still a lot of bill titles in play. I think close to around 1,000. So there's still time to get stuff done. It's not done until they sine die and go home.
Yes. John Riley, Montana Television Network. Governors, every conservative group that's proposed this or every nonpartisan group that's proposed this, it's a multi-year step. But all those proposals that I've looked at either have deep cuts to federal spending or sharp increase to income taxes. What do you guys see as the potential going forward?
Well, I'll comment, then I'll let the governor comment as well. The federal government, just like every business and every family and most states, need to live within their means. We need to match revenue with expenses. I think this can be done without significant tax increases, but it means being really prudent, just like we've done in the state. As you know, we've been able to cut taxes significantly. We've been able to pay off all of our debt. How did we do that? We funded essential services. We increased efficiencies, and then we let the economy grow our way out of the problem. This was done after World War I in the United States at the federal level. It was done after World War II. We accumulated war debt. We grew our way out of the solution. I think the same thing's possible again now.
Yeah, I mean, look, the way this amendment is structured, I mean, there's a period of time where Congress would be able to work this in. It wouldn't require it immediately because we understand we're in a hole. So they would have a period. You guys are what are you calling it in terms of the period that they would have?
10-year debt break.
The debt break, yeah. So there's going to be a debt break. But, I mean, one of the things that irks me about how some of this stuff is discussed is Congress will propose a budget sometimes, and it'll take one program from X to X plus whatever, and people will say that's a cut. And you're like, well, how is it a cut if you're spending more than you were before? And they say, well, that's less than the anticipated increase. So all this budgeting stuff is hot wired for more spending because they say if you don't increase a certain program by 7%, if you only increase it by 3%, then that's actually a cut. To me, you're still increasing spending. So a lot can be done. One, I think the DOGE has a potential to really help streamline in significant numbers. But two, so much can be done if you literally will just freeze spending. Like if we go back to 2019 levels, and not counting Social Security, but just the discretionary budget, if you just went back to that level and froze it, heck, if you went back to that level, froze it, and even allowed defense to grow, you would still have significant savings. So much of this stuff is just put on top of spending increase on top of spending increase, and it's hot wired. I think a balanced budget requirement, all that changes, and they're going to approach it much differently. And I'll give you an example of the federal government. I mentioned this when we were talking to legislators. We had, during the Biden administration, various things passed. They would send money to the states, but there were certain strings attached that were going to require us to change our policies. And so I rejected that, particularly on infrastructure, on some of this refugee money. And so we told them that. We said, we're going to send it back to you. Let us know. They didn't even know how to accept the money because like nobody had ever done that before. And so I met with Elon Musk on Friday, and I said, hey, Elon, I've got almost $1 billion here in federal spending we've rejected. We wanted to give it back to the Biden. They didn't, and Elon's like, oh, we'll take care of that. He got a guy, one of his guys, they called Treasury. We had like the routing number and like off to the races. And so it is going to just force them to change behavior and change the way they do things. And so much of the way things are done in Washington is hot wired to produce the results we do. I mentioned it with the legislature. In Florida, no agency is entitled to any money. Every year you got to justify your budget in Florida, and that's what you have to do. And that's how it should be. It should be the same for federal agencies as well. So there's going to be a lot of change in thinking if we have some restraints on the ability of the people in Congress to plunge us deeper into debt.
Okay. Is there a last question? Yes.
Yeah, so on the floor discussion, and you kind of talked about this too, about Congress sort of preempting what the convention would be once we get close here. And I think that was the contribution to why it died on the floor last week. That we get close enough here, and then Congress all of a sudden is like, whoa, let's just do our own thing and get ahead of this. Any thoughts on that?
Well, but that would actually be a good thing if they did that, because we are not going to be satisfied if they do anything less than something that will actually work, right? And so you would have all these states would reject Congress doing some type of half measure. So they are going to have to write something that is going to work. And it may not be 100% what Greg and I would write, but my thing is in some of these things, they're pass-fail exercises. It either gets the job done or it doesn't. And if it doesn't get the job done at all, whether that's my way or someone else, it doesn't work. If I'm doing it a way to get the job done, then that gets the job done. If you're doing it a different way to get the job done, that's fine. So there'll be details that'll be worked out, but I think it'll be something that'll be good. So I don't think it will preempt positive constitutional change if Congress is going to try to do a bait and switch. That's not going to work, and we would continue to then seek the 34th state. The reason why you want Congress to do it after 33 is it just saves a lot of time, because then you have the final product, it goes back to Montana, back to Florida, and then we have the great ratification debates across the country. Now, there won't be much of a debate in Florida about passing it. We will pass it. I'm sure most of the states would probably pass it, but you got to get to 38. And so that'll be a great debate for this country to have. And shouldn't we in the states have an important role to play in the future viability of the republic? Because make no mistake, this is not just some cosmetic reform or some tangential issue. This is an existential threat, the way our fiscal trajectory is, on the very viability of the country. And we can be as great as we want statewide, but if the country has a major debt crisis, we're all going to feel that. So let's do something about it, and I'm confident that this is a viable and productive way to go about it. All right, thanks everybody, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep.